Hi again, this is going to be another video on React and Redux, and we're going to continue with our project. Right now, I keep going to Safari, but the thing's in Chrome. So here we are in Chrome, and I've got this system that's got a bunch of counters, and every counter can kind of keep track of its own values, right? And you can increment or decrement them. And so what I'd like to do is point out one of the other things that Redux is doing for us here, right? So Redux is about application state. And so my application state is a list of values that Redux takes care of, okay? And it shares those values with separate components. So I have a separate component here that gets some of the values, right? And what if I had another component that showed the total of all the counts, right, and showed the total over here, right? So how would we work with that? So without Redux, we would probably go into app and we need to move state out of counter, right? Actually, you know what I did is I renamed this. Let me stop a minute. I renamed this guy counters with an S. I should rename this one also. Sorry, I just decided to do that all of a sudden, right? And then over here, I should make this in here. I should make this one counters and counters, right? Yeah, there we go, right? Oh wait, counter is not defined. Oh yeah, because I've got to do it down here too. Okay, so anyway, so what are we gonna do? What I want to do is I want to share state across multiple components, right? If I wanted to do that without Redux, if I was at this stage where the counters component kept track of the count for all counters, I'd have to start think about moving state up into app so I can share it with another component, in here, like if I added another one here, right? So let's make that component and then we'll talk about it, right? So I'm going to make a brand new file in the components folder and I'll call it total. Right? So we'll call it totaljs. I like that name, totaljs. I should make that if it's not a library already, right? So, and we'll import React. We'll import component from React. This is all the boilerplate stuff, right? And then what we'll do is we'll import, because we're going to use Redux, we'll import connect from React Redux. Okay, and then we'll make a class called total. It'll extend component. Okay, and the total class will display the total count for all components. Okay, so for all the counters, I mean. Okay, so it'll display the total, and it'll get the total by getting the value from the store, from the Redux store, and then calculating the total and displaying it. Okay, and so we'll do that this way. Remember, we have to say, well, I'm going to go over these parts first, like the hard parts, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to map state to props. Okay. So this will just be review. The first time I learned this, it was pretty difficult to take it all in and remember it all. So I think if we go over this again, it'll make a lot more sense, right? So we'll map state to props. Map state to props always takes in state, right? And it returns the values that you want to map on the props of the component that you're connecting. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to map the counters, and I get those from state.counters. Okay, so this is the state, and remember it's state.counters because they come from the combined reducers here in reducers index, and this is the name that I gave to this piece of state. It's an array of counters, and it's an array of counters because the counter reducer always returns an array of values, okay? And it's 4 values because I have 4 here as the default. We'll do it in the future where we add a new count, okay? Anyway, let's go back to our total component. So I'm going to get the value here, and then we need to, actually, this component doesn't need to need to map any dispatch, so there's not going to be no buttons. It's not going to trigger any actions. So we can leave map dispatch to props out of this one, okay? But what we do need to do is we need to say export default connect, and then we'll review this one right here because this is the confusing part, right? We're going to connect map state to props, right? And then the connect method, since we don't have map dispatch to props, we can leave that parameter off, and it's going to return a function to us. So we call that function and we pass in the component that we want to connect, okay? So here's map state to props. This is the function here. It's going to call that function and pass in state whenever the store changes, and it'll, you know, map these values onto props in this component, okay? Okay, cool. Let's add a render method to our component. So now we're good to go, right? So if the component wants to work with counters, then it can get them, right? So let's say return, and maybe we'll return a div. And what we want to do is maybe I want to have an h1 in here that will show the total, right? So maybe we'll say this dot props dot counters, right? Because that's what I've mapped, you know, with map state to props. Actually, I guess I could have done it here. I could have reduced these and just made a total property. Let's do it here, and then we'll refactor to that, okay? So I'm going to say this dot props dot counters. I got all the counters here, and then I can say dot reduce, right? So remember, reduce takes in an array and reduces it to a single value. Okay, so I'm going to take in all of my counters here, and it's going to give me the accumulator and the current value. Okay, and so the accumulator is like the running total, and the value is the current value at the current index, right? So what I want to do is I want to return the accumulator plus the value. Okay, so we'll say, hey, accumulator plus value is the value that we return, and then that's the total for our total component, right? It just adds up the count. Okay, so there we go. So we've got another component connected to Redux, and it has access to the store. And we can put this component anywhere. It's actually kind of funny. We're just going to put it in here, but it could be nested within any component anywhere, and I wouldn't have to worry about or you know, passing state up or down. You know, it's just going to grab it because the provider passes the state down to everybody here, right? Or it makes like Redux available to everybody, right? So let's go get our counter, right? Or I mean our total component. So I'm going to do import total from oh yeah, I guess I got to go up one folder and get total. And then what we'll do is we'll print the total here at the bottom. Oh, looks like the total is 99. And I click on this one, it updates, and it updates the total. Hey, that's pretty good. Maybe I'll add some here, add a few more, subtract a couple, right? Hey, looks like it's working pretty good. So that's kind of a simple example, but if you think about this for a little while, and please think about this, right? Because the knee-jerk reaction is going to be like, hey, that was a lot of work just to add up a couple numbers. I could easily have just done that in app.js. But if you had a complex app with a lot of complicated components, this actually could be a very tricky dance to get these values to show up in different locations, right? With Redux, what's going to happen is it's always going to be done in the same way. You're going to create a component, you're going to connect it, and then map its state to properties on that component, okay? And then just connect it to make it all work, okay? If you want to make changes to state, then you're going to always do that through your actions, which will be handled by the reducer, okay? So once you've kind of got the situation, like the lay of the land figured out, this starts to become a lot easier than it seems the first time that you see it, okay? And in a lot of applications, you end up doing these things, but you do them a little bit differently because every application is a little bit different. And then everything kind of gets spread out into different locations. With Redux, everything always follows the same format here. You'll always have actions, you'll always have reducers, and if you're using React, you'll always map state to props and map dispatch to props. Okay, so anyway, so thanks for watching. I hope that that helps you understand Redux a little better, and we'll do some more examples in the future videos, and yeah, you guys all have a great day.